A remote Indigenous community in Northern Ontario, where 5 people died in a house fire last week, is so overwhelmed with grief that it has declared an emergency. The blaze on May 2nd killed a foster mother, her biological daughter, and 3 children she was raising at the Big Trout Lake First Nation. In a release yesterday, Chief Donnie Morris said that the tragedy is having a devastating impact on the entire community, with continuing effects that require external support and financial assistance. Morris said many young people are suffering from mental trauma, including some who are talking about suicide. He added that the community doesn't have the resources to handle the demand for mental health care, noting they don't have enough staff to provide people with the help that they need. The premiers of Ontario and Saskatchewan are set to meet in Toronto today. Doug Ford and Scott Moe will meet at the Ontario Legislature to discuss a variety of issues, including the federal carbon tax, interprovincial trade, and an upcoming meeting of Canada's premiers. The Conservative leaders have been vocal opponents of the federal carbon tax, and both launched court challenges against it last year. Last week, the Saskatchewan Court of Appeal ruled the federal government does have the constitutional power to implement a carbon tax in provinces that don't have a carbon price of their own. Moe has said his province will appeal the decision to the Supreme Court of Canada. Today's meeting comes after Ford recently met with newly elected Alberta Premier Jason Kenney, who has also vowed to fight that federal carbon tax. The Supreme Court is set to rule today on whether immigration detainees have the right to challenge their detentions in person before judges. Migrants who do not hold Canadian citizenship can now only challenge their detentions through an immigration tribunal, whose decisions are subject to only limited judicial review. The case centers on a Pakistani man who was granted refugee protection in Canada back in 2006, but was later detained after authorities learned he had a criminal record. He failed in 12 attempts to the Immigration and Review Board to be released and was eventually deported back to Pakistan, but his lawyers have continued to pursue the case. The federal government argued that extending the right to direct hearings before judges to migrant detainees would create uncertainty in the legal processes involving these decisions. The Justice Department has argued that the current system offers a comprehensive and expert process by an independent quasi-judicial board that provides a meaningful review. 2 BC reports say money laundering amounts to billions of dollars in the real estate market and sent prices up 5% last year. The Money Laundering Canada-wide report estimates up to $47 billion was affected last year across the country.
Wealthy criminals and those attempting to evade taxes have had the run of our province for too long, to the point that they are now distorting our economy, hurting families looking for housing, and impacting those who have lost loved ones due to the opioid overdose, a crisis so severe it's impacting average life expectancy data for British Columbia. The party is over. It may be spring, but winter is finally coming for those who rely on bulk cash transactions in their business model, those hiding their identities from regulators and police while buying homes in our real estate market, and those profiting handsomely from the death and misery of the overdose crisis.
An official with the Archdiocese of Detroit is welcoming Pope Francis's new church law about reporting clergy sex abuse and investigating bishops for cover-ups.
So what the Holy Father issued today in his motu proprio, "You are the light of the world," is really legislation for the entire Catholic Church on reporting cases of clergy sexual abuse and also protection for whistleblowers. The Holy Father, in offering this legislation, is really instituting it for the entire Universal Church. And I know a lot of bishops that are welcoming this legislation because it gives clear focus and clear direction onto what bishops are called to do in the midst of the crisis. But also really gives a mechanism for people within the church to also report where they believe that there have been abuses or cover-ups or mishandling of cases individually by bishops or superiors in the church.